Scorched earth, shock and awe, blood and bone, in the end, only one left standing. These were the words uttered by Homelander to Butcher in the third season of The Boys. Both of them are frustrated at how Vought exploits them, and similarly angry at the world for placing them in such an unfair position. They hate each other, but for just a moment they come to a mutual understanding as the eerie music sets in quietly. But even long before this exchange, there was a duality between Butcher and Homelander that was made extensively clear right from the get-go. Well, sort of. In the first episode of Season 1, you're not really given a strong indication of either character's backstory. Hell, you're not even really shown what their true motivations are. We're given a hint of Homelander's false front he shows to the public, as well as a small scene displaying his cruelty, but that's about it. Butcher's personality is made a bit more obvious as he helps out our main character Huey, who recently had to watch his girlfriend die at the hands of A-Train. He gives him a chance to bug Vought Tower and even manages to save his life when he's attacked by Translucent, but it's revealed at the very end of the episode that he's lying about his identity and he's not really a Fed. In that way, I think the mysteriousness of both of these characters displays how similar they really are, and it only becomes more obvious as time goes on. The second episode of The Boys picks right back up where the first one left off, with Butcher putting Translucent in his trunk. It turns out they actually didn't kill him, as he's still bumping around back there, which brings Huey a ton of relief. Unfortunately, it also means that he's even more fucked, because Translucent has seen what they look like, but it's okay because Butcher has a friend who can help them out. We meet Frenchie, an impulsive and soft-hearted genius with a deceivingly tough exterior. Butcher tells him to open the trunk, and upon realizing that it's Translucent, he immediately tells him to go away. Unfortunately, Butcher uses that against him by pointing out that he's already seen his face, so now it's his obligation to help, once again reinforcing just how manipulative Butcher really is. In the same episode, we see a really ridiculous advertisement for a Good Samaritan program being juxtaposed to an extravagant party among rich and privileged people as Madeline Stillwell attempts to talk the senator into allowing heroes into the armed forces. But the man is extremely stubborn, making some pretty compelling arguments for why he's against it. The biggest being that he's afraid of Homelander. But this makes sense, as he has every reason to be. Homelander is only loyal to Madeline, and God knows he's not going to let the army tell him what to do. He knows he'll steal the show and take over because he's a fucking psychopath. Homelander talks to Madeline Stillwell about the recent death of his mayor and his whole family, causing her to lecture him about it as if he had just, broke a window with a baseball or something. Considering his entire family was just murdered, it's really bizarre that they talk about it so casually like this, but it's important because it establishes the kind of person that Homelander is, while also elaborating on the horrible thing he did at the end of the previous episode. To put it in summary, Homelander is a man-child who is desperate to feel loved by others, and he will literally do anything for the people he wants validation from, with little regard to who else it might affect. It goes to show that he's incredibly delusional and narcissistic, believing that the world owes him love and affection. This is his kryptonite, or his Achilles heel if you prefer. It's the only thing that keeps him from destroying the whole world. Homelander calls the Deep to the office and asks him why he felt the need to tell Madeline Stillwell about what he had done to the mayor of Baltimore, and he immediately gives in out of fear. This shows you two things that are very important. For starters, it makes it very clear the position that the Deep is in. He is the absolute bottom of the seven, considered the most worthless asset to the group yet, but this also tells you about Homelander's true nature. He has the strength to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants to, using fear and intimidation to achieve his goals. He's impulsive, taking action without thinking it through for even a second. Homelander's obsession with Stillwell is reinforced pretty straightforwardly as well, with the fact that he likes to watch her, constantly. Everything he does is all for her, and he absolutely refuses to give her any alone time. Homelander displays some clear jealousy of Stillwell's baby, showing his childish and selfish nature as he expresses clear discomfort with the way she uses him as an advertisement. Episode 4 opens up with a really cute flashback scene of Butcher and Becca cuddling after sex. This is the first moment where we truly begin to understand Butcher, as well as why he lets hatred consume him. In retrospect, it's really sad, primarily because it shows that Becca brought the best out of Butcher, a side of him you rarely get to see anymore. Upon waking up, he goes and eats a Hot Pocket while obsessively watching the last known recording of Becca left available. She's gone missing, and Butcher intends to find her by any means necessary. Susan returns to her office to see Butcher standing right there, obviously still disgusted and annoyed by his presence, but this time's a bit different, as he has pictures of Popclaw and A-Train taking Compound V, some kind of enhancement drug. There's a clear sexual tension between them that's quite a bit different than the dynamic he had with Becca. Butcher makes it clear he doesn't like that she bites back, despite how attractive she is. In many ways, the two of them are pretty similar. Homelander and Maeve try to stop terrorists from hijacking a plane, but he ends up making the problem significantly worse by accidentally lasering the control panel. Seeing that the damage is already done, he decides to abandon the ship and convinces Maeve to go with him. This ends up being the first moment where Homelander is actually terrifying, but it also feels like he did this on purpose, because afterwards he gives a speech about all the people that died in that plane crash, stating that this wouldn't have happened if Congress just let superheroes into the army, which disturbs Maeve so greatly, she moves away from the area to go look at the lake. He then follows her, telling her that the sacrifice might have been catastrophic, but that it was necessary for what they attempted to achieve. In truth, it's clear that all those lives meant nothing to him, using it as an excuse for his cause. Homelander begins harassing Madeline Stillwell by complaining about the speech she wrote for him, but she just kind of brushes him off, stating that they need boundaries. He demands her attention constantly, and any second he feels personally offended, it just has to be her fault. His constant desire for love is a thirst that can never be quenched, and it's only made worse by the baby she cares for. Butcher visits Rachel Saunders, the sister of Becca, and discovers that a funeral was held for her after 8 years of being missing. He expresses frustration, displaying his inability to move on and let it all go. He feels nothing but hatred in his heart for the people that took her away from him, feeling angry that anyone would move on, taking his reasonable anger out irrationally on the people around him. Butcher looks at the grave made for Becca, with the shot looming over him to emphasize how small he feels in this situation. He angrily smashes the grave with a hammer and promptly leaves. It's clear this whole fiasco has left him feeling incredibly weak, tearing down the false delusions that she's truly dead and leaving without an apology. Homelander gives a speech to the people present at the Capes for Christ movement, going off script and riling people up with talk of how Congress really needs to approve superheroes into the army after the tragedy that befell their nation a week ago. There's something very chilling about the way he distorts the message of the Bible as a means of justifying vengeance, using terms like American and correct as if they're mutually exclusive. But it's accurate. This is really how American politicians act. Homelander is using the naive and gullible nature of Christian conservatism to get people supporting his cause, but the truth is he doesn't really care about God or anyone else. Why would he when he basically sees himself as God? This act he puts up infuriates Stillwell and leaves Starlight feeling really nervous and uncomfortable, and I honestly can't blame either of them. Mother's Milk and Butcher also discover that superheroes aren't really chosen by God at all. No, instead, they actually pump them out in a lab like some kind of product. Literally, they are taken in as babies and juiced up with the stuff right from the get-go. Butcher and Mother's Milk manage to secure a sample of Compound V, but not without a shootout. As if his objectification of superheroes wasn't already clear, he literally grabs the fucking baby and uses it as a gun. I fucking love this show so much, holy shit. Homelander does a little tour of the bedroom he grew up in as a kid, but he ends up leaving the set out of anger that someone left a certain blanket on his head. It's clear that this origin story being made for Homelander is just a fabrication, something that he can't stand to record, because he knows that he's just used as a product. He was a baby pumped full of drugs, and made into what Vought wanted him to be, never given a choice or free will. Made in a factory, and given superpowers on a whim. It's easy to understand why he has such a constant need for validation and attention to the point that he will hurt people to gain it. He wants to feel in control of his life when it's clear he's just a slave to Vought, and a slave to his own loneliness. If it's not obvious, Madeline Stillwell is a selfish and horrible person. Shocking, I know, but hilariously, even Homelander is a victim to her manipulation. She doesn't treat any of them like people except for him, and that's only because he's literally so powerful that she has no choice. So it's really funny to me that she calls Starlight selfish for refusing to put up with any of her bullshit anymore. But unlike everyone else save for Homelander, Starlight doesn't back down. This puts Stillwell in a difficult position, as now she has to face reality and make a change. Not because she values Starlight, but because she's covered up the horrible behavior of her superheroes for a long time, but now is at risk for having those horrible things exposed. She's become a victim of her own manipulation, and realizes just how bitter it tastes. Butcher takes Huey to a meeting for people affected by superheroes, but he just acts like an asshole, calling all of them pussies for moving on and letting go. But it's becoming more obvious to Huey that Butcher has a tendency to take his hatred a bit too far. He took him here as a subtle jab, telling Huey that he thinks he's making a mistake by getting attached to Starlight, but in truth, he just goes to show that he's an insecure child consumed by rage and anger. The introduction of Mesmer is pretty straightforward. He signs autographs for a movie that shows the usefulness of his unique ability to read minds. Mother's Milk needs him to use his power to read the female, so naturally he gives him the ability to see his daughter once a month. While this scene is painfully awkward because this little girl doesn't really know him that well, nor does she have any attachment to him, it is impressive how quickly this series made me care about him. He was only present for 2 scenes so far, and I'm already totally invested in this character, but I think that just highlights how well written this show is. Butcher takes Huey to the bench where his wife Becca was last seen, and it's here where he finally decides to open up to him with a tear shedding in his eye as he admits that Homelander had raped his wife. I feel like this shows how desperate he is for Huey not to stray away from their intended goal. He doesn't know how else to make it clear to him that the time he spends with Starlight is not a good idea. Even at his most reasonable, Butcher is still using his own trauma and pain as a way to force others to bend to his will. Homelander is understandably frustrated at the fact that he's being forced to lie about his childhood, and it's bad enough he's just an actor playing out scenes, but I imagine it's also painful to tell people that you had a good childhood when in reality, that concept was totally robbed from him at a young age. The only thing he ever wanted was connection, but now he's so much of a monster that he'll never truly find it. Butcher arrives at Mesmer's home, feeling disgusted that the boys would resort to asking a soup for help, but Mother's Milk explains that violence isn't always the best answer. Sometimes people just help because you show them basic respect. It's then shown why Homelander was so angry at the blanket being present on the set. Apparently this really was a blanket from his childhood, as well as the only thing that ever gave him comfort despite the fact that he was treated as an experiment. Here he is giving away lies about the childhood he never had, and that blanket sat there on the bed as a reminder of the truth, that he's a weapon made by scientists. He remembers the time they played peekaboo through the window, a fond moment despite the horrible things he went through, but this memory only makes him grit his teeth with a bitter scowl. Butcher gives the Compound V sample to the deputy director of the CIA, as well as a list of demands including protection, secured jobs, and the prosecution of Homelander. Unfortunately, she states that she can give everything listed with that last one being the only exception because he's literally invincible and impossible to kill. She tells him that it's a losing fight, that going against him would be suicide. But Butcher doesn't listen and leaves with an expression of rage. He will do anything in his power to take Homelander down, because he feels weak that someone so powerful, practically godlike, would do something so horrible to the person he loves most. He feels like his happiness was robbed from him, and in many ways it definitely was, but the hardest part to accept is that the person who hurt him will never be able to pay. Mesmer calls his ex-wife and tells her that he knows his daughter didn't really want to see him, and he's well aware of that. Even though he helped the boys out in exchange for a chance to see his daughter, he realizes that what she wants is more important. But more than that, he wants to be a hero again. He wants to join Vought once more, hoping Homelander will put in a good word for him. Butcher remembers the time he first met Homelander, revealing that his wife used to run his Twitter account and was even given the offer of running his entire social media presence. I feel like part of why he's so angry about Huey moving on has to do with his jealousy. He's angry that Huey has found someone else because he feels as if moving on and letting go is weakness. Homelander attempts to ask Stillwell about Becca, but she pretends to be confused. He knows she's lying and declines her offer to spend more time with him. He's tired of being used as an asset. He's tired of her using her love for him as an excuse to get what she wants, but above all else, he's tired of the lies. That's all he's ever been a part of, is lies. Upon finding out it was Mesmer who ratted them out, we begin to see the darker side to Butcher's hatred. With every punch, Mesmer sees a glimpse of his past, and attempts to talk him out of killing him by stating that he can help, but Butcher's having no part of it, grabbing his head and slamming it against the sink in rage. To him, Mesmer's betrayal just serves as further proof of his belief that soups are the spawn of the devil. Once a soup, always a soup. It might seem cruel and unusual, but they immediately follow this scene up with a flashback detailing the moment that Butcher became the monster he is today. This woman shows him a security camera recording of what happened to his wife. He looks in disbelief and defeat, shocked that a superhero like Homelander, a man who's supposed to be saving lives and helping others, would do something so terrible. Homelander meets up with Jonah Vogelbaum, a scientist responsible in his creation as well as part of what led to the unfortunate rape of Becca Butcher. He tells Homelander about what had happened to her, that she was pregnant with his child. This is the truth, but he follows it up with a lie by telling Homelander that she died on the table and the baby died with her. This moment is really good because it somehow makes me feel sorry for Homelander. Vogelbaum apologizes to him, stating that he should have been raised with a family that loves him, but it's much too late for apologies. Homelander has grown into the monster he is today. He's the most powerful man in the world, and he's never once felt truly happy. The parallels between Butcher and Homelander are not subtle in the slightest, and there's an intentionality to them that the show writers themselves want you to pick up on. They are polar opposites in just about every way. Butcher is a man so driven by hatred, he lets it consume everything he does. Homelander is dedicated to finding love and acceptance from others. But where this becomes the most obvious, for me at least, isn't the conversation between them in Season 3, or Starlight straight up pointing it out in Season 2. No, it's a point right here in Season 1 that I neglected to bring up. What else would I be talking about than the moment where Butcher makes eye contact with Homelander in order to establish their complex rivalry? They're both narcissistic and manipulative, using others for their personal gain. Homelander is loyal, valuing honesty to the point that he will do anything for the person he demands love from. He feels entitled to that love, performing selfish acts for a selfless reason. Butcher, on the other hand, lets hatred consume every action he commits. He dehumanizes Supes, believing them to be the ultimate evil. He is helping people in some ways by killing superheroes and sympathizing with others, allowing them a chance to fight back, but he is performing selfless acts for a selfish reason. They are two sides of the same coin, all for one and one for all, but what the series is trying to make obvious again and again is that neither of them are heroes. They're both terrible for their own reasons. Thank you for watching this video. I know that there's probably more I could touch on, but I had to divide it up into multiple videos because there's just so much content to cover. Every episode's a fucking hour long, and this script has really taken a lot out of me. But I've got plenty more videos on the boys ready, and I'm excited to get them all out, so just have patience. I got a lot of content coming out. Been working on like 20 different videos at once, and I just can't wait to get all of it off of my chest and just take a fucking break. I have been working hard lately. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hit that like, subscribe, whatever. See you in the next video.
We're